Hi guys. So today we are going to be talking about uh, how to express regret and criticism, particularly now that we're talking about crimes. How can we show that we regret, that we feel bad about our actions, that we are sorry for them, or how can we criticize someone else's actions? So this is it. So imagine this situation. This is what happened. John stole some clothes from a store and he had to spend a night in jail. Okay? That was the situation. That's what happened. So John expresses his regret about the situation by saying the following: If I hadn't stolen the clothes, I wouldn't have spent a night in jail. Okay? So that is one form using, you guessed correctly, a conditional form in order to talk about a situation in the past which I cannot change anymore, but that if I could, I would have changed my actions. Okay? So basically, this is a conditional about an impossible past. Why impossible? I mean, because the situation already happened. So I can dream, I can imagine, but in reality, I cannot change it. Okay, let's give it a look to one more example. So imagine that's the reality. I hope it won't be the reality for any of you in the future, but that's what happened. I didn't study for my exam, so I failed it. So this person, who is obviously not you, regrets and says, I would have passed my exam if I had studied for it. You cannot change it anymore. The exam is already failed, but I mean, if I had the opportunity, if I could go back, I would have passed it if I had studied for it. Okay, so that's basically the last form of conditional that we have. We have already studied the real conditional, the possible conditional, the unlikely conditional, and now this is the impossible conditional. Why? I mean, because there is absolutely zero possibility that I can do or undo the action once it is over, right? Okay, so let's analyze the structure of this third conditional for talking about a regret, okay? So let's take a look. Remember that conditionals usually are divided into two different clauses or two different sentences, okay? One of those clauses or sentences contains the condition, that is to say, the thing that needs to happen in order for the other one to happen, okay? That is the conditional and that is expressed with the phrase if. It is introduced by the phrase if. For example, if I hadn't stolen the clothes. So for the condition, you can see in the first one and in the second one, if I had studied for it. And then also conditionals have the second clause or the second phrase that mentions the result of the condition. That is to say, if I do this action, this is the result. So in this case, the result of this like impossible dream idea that I have is I would I wouldn't have spent a night in jail. Or in the first one, I would have passed my exam. So as you can see, right, we have the same two phrases, the same two clauses. Now the thing that we need to pay attention to is how my verbs are expressed. So let's give it a closer look. You have in there the two sentences and basically, as you can see, they have the same structure. In the if clause, that is in the condition, la que va con la palabra if, we have obviously the subject, right? Then we need to have the auxiliary verb in past. Y pues no hay de dos. Si es en affirmative, had, and if it is in negative, hadn't. And then the verb in past participle. How do I decide if the auxiliary goes in affirmative or in negative? Well, that depends a good deal on the meaning of the phrase, right? In this case, como si se robó la ropa, bueno, lo voy a poner en negativo, right? If I hadn't stolen the clothes. Or, for example, como en el otro, lo que pasó fue que no estudió, well, the phrase is going to be in affirmative. If I had studied. So it's going to be in the opposite of what the reality was. Okay? If I'm not making myself clear, let me know and I will try to make it clearer for you. Okay, that is the condition. Had or hadn't and the verb in past participle. But now let's take a look at the result, a lo que se supone que va a pasar o que es el resultado. So in this case, we need three elements. Modal would, that's not going to change, modal would. Of course, lo mismo. If it is affirmative, would. If it is negative, wouldn't. Okay? And same rule. It's going to be the opposite as what happened in reality. I wouldn't have spent a night in Yale porque sí lo pasó. Or I would have passed my exam porque no lo pasó, right? So, auxiliary would, ya sea affirmative or negative. Auxiliary have, that's in infinitive, never going to change, siempre have. And we will have my verb también in past participle. Wouldn't have spent or would have passed. Okay? So as you can see, those are the structures that are needed in each one of the parts of the condition. One more thing, which you already know from the previous one. You can put both phrases, both clauses, in any position that you want. Ya sea que quieran comenzar con la condición, if I hadn't stolen the clothes, I wouldn't have spent a night in Yale. O pueden comenzar con el resultado. I would have passed my exam if I had studied for it. Okay? The only thing that is different is the comma. Si empezamos con if, my sentence needs to be divided by a comma. But if I begin with the other, the if is going to be in the middle and that's going to be the division. So I need no comma. Okay? So it can be one or the other as long as it makes sense. Okay? So that's up to you and your common sense to make sure that my phrase is clear. And then finally, a couple more expressions that we can use for expressing regret. Ya ahí no tanto como que causa y efecto, but just in general, regret about something are the following one. So imagine that's the situation, that's what happened. I walked through a dark neighborhood. You know, it was night, there was not enough light, and someone stole my wallet. So that's what happened. So my regret, I'm thinking later, oh, you know what? I wish. I'm not expressing like qué pasó y por qué. I'm just expressing something that I really, really wish had been different, right? I wish I hadn't walked through that neighborhood. I mean, if I could change something, if I could go back in time, I wish I hadn't walked through that neighborhood. Or, si les gusta una un poquito más dramática, if only I hadn't walked through that neighborhood. So those basically mean in Spanish, ojalá, or siquiera, or something like that. Those are for expressing that we regret very deeply and kind of dramatically a particular action. Okay? And as you can see, it's the same structure from the condition clause in the conditional. Hadn't walked. Okay? Auxiliary have, past, and verb to be in past participle. So I hope you're ready now to make some expressing regret sentences and let me know if I can help you with something.